There are a lot of things in language learning that I wish weren't true, but they are. It's frustrating. I wish I could change it, but the sooner you accept them, the sooner you can move on and make progress. So let's take a look at some hard truths when learning a foreign language. Accents matter more than they should. It doesn't matter how good your grammar and vocabulary are. If you don't have a good accent, people are going to think you're dumber than you are. This is a huge thing I have to deal with. I feel I sound pretty derpy sometimes in Korean, like I'm a kid. And that affects how I'm perceived, unfortunately. I'd love to live in a world where people just look at the content of what I'm saying and not let my accent taint the information I'm trying to get across, but it is not the case. It's not every foreign accent that has this problem, because there are some foreign accents that might actually be perceived as more intelligent. And you don't have to have a 100% native accent, but there is a pretty tight range of accents that allow native speakers to just listen to what you're trying to say instead of being distracted by your pronunciation. It's unfortunate, and it's something I deal with daily with my less than perfect Korean pronunciation, but it's a hard truth nonetheless. All you can really do is do your best to mimic native pronunciation, and where that's not possible, be okay with the fact that your accent is getting in the way of how you'd like to communicate and how you'd like to be perceived. As an adult, that's frustrating because it seems like children can pick up a new accent without any effort at all. And that brings me to the next hard truth. Adult brains have limits, and younger brains will always work faster. It doesn't matter who you are. A genius will tell you that their brain worked better and faster when they were younger. That's just how biology works. I do think adult brains can do more than we tend to give them credit for. There are tons of examples of people getting their college degree in their 60s and beyond, but there are realities you can't deny. You're going to have to treat your brain well, manage stress levels, sleep, nutrition, if you're going to give your brain the best chance possible. Those are things that we probably could have ignored when we were young and still done well in school. Not anymore. It might take longer, but most things are within our reach. And I say most because you can get to a great level in a foreign language no matter your age, but native or near native levels starting later in life is probably out of the cards. Part of the reason is that it just might not mathematically work out. Language learning takes time, a lot of time, but maybe you don't have the ability to put in all the time that you need to. We like to think that 15 minutes a day is going to lead us to fluency, but that's not really the case. If you look at any YouTuber who has learned a foreign language to a high level, I can guarantee you there was a time in their life where they were spending 4 or more hours a day with the language. Maybe that wasn't concentrated study, but there was some form of daily immersion for hours on end. We gotta stop pretending that language study can be done with little to no effort. It's just what companies promise you in their advertisements so that you'll give them your hard-earned money. I understand the frustration of it taking a lot of time, and what makes it worse is that progress is not linear at all. You can be doing all the right things and not see the fruits of your labor. Plateaus are just par for the course with language learning, but even knowing that doesn't make things any easier. I will say what feels like a plateau might not actually be that though. You may just be improving in ways that aren't readily apparent. There's surface level knowledge that's visible, and then there's deeper knowledge in a language that you may not even be consciously aware you're learning. So while it may look like you're not making progress for a long time, that knowledge may eventually jump to the surface and you'll make a lot of visible progress really quickly. Not always, but sometimes. And the reason for that is that language learning is more organic than you think. We like to think of it as some sort of equation. If I study this much, then I will make this much progress. But the brain sometimes is going to do what it's going to do. There's so many factors involved in the process, there's no way to scientifically get the exact result you're wanting. It's a lot like growing plants. You try to give it the right amount of sunlight, water, nutrients that it needs, but the plant is going to do what it wants to do. In the same way, we're doing the best we can to study and put our brains in the ideal environment for language learning, but beyond that, our brain is going to do what it's going to do. When something doesn't work, all we can do is investigate the problem and try to fix it. It would be wonderful if there were one method that would guarantee language success, but it just doesn't exist. And asking language geniuses what they do to study might actually be counterproductive. I remember watching this interview of this student who got a perfect score on the college entrance exam Suneung here in Korea. It's a super hard test that children spend years preparing for. They asked the student for advice on how to study to get a perfect score. And he basically said, just make sure to read your textbook every day. That's not a study method that normal people can use, just sitting there reading. It also goes against any studying advice I've ever heard because it's considered too passive and doesn't give you immediate feedback. But you know what? It worked for him. Great. The language learning community goes through these trends about the best way to study, but whatever works for you works. People are different, and whatever works for you doesn't necessarily work for me. And for some reason, some people get really upset when you don't agree with them on that. They want to think that they're studying the right way and you're studying the wrong way. But if you're making progress, you're making progress. And that just goes to show that different people have different abilities, and that means we're going to learn differently and have different outcomes. And when you throw the natural human compulsion to compare yourself to others into the mix, that can create a lot of anguish. Some people are really good at listening, but are terrible at reading. Some people are great at speaking, but amazingly awful at writing. I wish I could be good at everything, but I just have to swallow the fact that my speaking and listening skills aren't that great. They will never be the strongest part of my abilities. I can't ignore them, I still have to practice them, but my goals and expectations for them have to be realistic. Whatever your abilities or learning style though, you're going to have to memorize more than you want. Rote memorization gets a bad rap in language circles, but it's absolutely necessary. I don't know any other subject in school that says rote memorization is bad, but for some reason, a lot of people feel things like flashcards and recall practice are not good ways to study, and it just doesn't make sense. If you go to a party and you're introduced to someone important that you need to remember their name, you do whatever you can to remember that person's name for the next time. You don't wait around for more exposure so you can naturally learn their names. I am awful with names. I will have to ask that person 20 times what their name is before it sticks if I don't make some kind of mnemonic device in my head and quiz myself mentally every few minutes. Same with vocab. If I don't quiz myself pretty soon after I'm exposed to it, it's going to be gone very quickly. Language learning requires a lot of repetitions and reviews that many people find boring or difficult. It's often not fun, but it's what you've got to do. And let's say you do work and reach an unfathomable level in your target language. You're probably not going to be happy. If I think back to what it was like when I started learning Korean, if I were to meet someone with my current level, I would A, be super jealous, and B, be absolutely thrilled to know that I would make it this far. But you know, as humans, we always want more. We feel like we are not good enough. You could probably go talk to an athlete that just won Olympic gold, and they'd be able to tell you all the ways that they're actually not the best in the world. It's sad, but true. No matter how good you get, you're probably never going to be happy with your abilities. In the end, language learning is a journey that you have to figure out for yourself. What are the ways I'm going to study? What are my goals? You're just going to have to try a bunch of things and figure them out for yourself. Advice from someone who's achieved more than you can be helpful, but in the end, it's a process of trial and error. It's a process of discovery, wins and failures. No one can give you the answer that will fit your exact situation. That's what can cause you to go insane from the frustration, but it's also where the fun is. So I hope you can stick with it even during the bad times. I actually have a video about just that, what to do when you have study burnout. So please feel free to check it out here. Thank y'all for watching, and I wish y'all all the best.